Session with me, Arun Sharma, and we just did a session on number systems. So I would continue a little bit more of the same with you today in this part, and also we'll talk to you a little bit about the D-Day strategy of CAT, as in how should you develop your or how should you prepare for the actual exam in terms of the actual D-Day solving strategies, uh, attitude strategies inside the exam, and so on. How should you organize your thinking, your mindset, your attitude in your actual solving of the exam on D-Day? So, so to start off, then uh, Quants, as I just mentioned in the previous session that happened from 11:15 to 11:45 today, in QA, the thinking or the solving of questions has to be on the basis of triggers, individual reactions. Remember few things which are standard common courtesy, so to say, to the cat for the cat is one principal way of qualifying for this exam is that you read stuff only once and you read in parts. Do not take more than what you can chew. Only take as much as you can chew at a time, right? So stop, keep stopping, stop, react, move, then stop, react, move within a question. So you're not going like a train engine till the end of the question and then restarting solving. That's your solving has to be during a first reading. And then the other aspect was whether you're looking at algebraic solving, numerical solving, or algebraic plus numerical solving. You'll remember that 99% of CAT questions have both these options in them. There are only 1% CAT questions which will only be algebraic. So you have to know the algebra, but you have to keep it aside while actually solving inside the paper, inside the exam. Now, before I'll just in this session I'll just use number systems questions as a filler towards the end, if required, and if there's some time left towards the end of what I want to message to all of you. And uh, before I do that, let's say you're talking about the actual timing of the cat or the actual doing inside the cat. That when you're inside the cat exam, and the quant section starts, what strategy should you pick up for developing your quant section or for solving your quant section? The first thing, as you know, the quant section comes after the VRC section, after the DILR section. So only after these two sections are crossed do you get access to the QA section. So there's a tendency for a lot of people to be soul weary, bone weary, to be in general wary while solving the quants questions. So you have to make sure that you take fresh card. You assume that you are starting, you have had a completely free 24 hours, and you are starting to solve fresh in the exam. So this is very important because what has happened, and I've seen this many times, especially if, and this is happening especially over the last 3-4 years, the DILR section did not go well. The DILR section did not go well, and hence when they reached the quant section, the mind was completely off. The emotions were in a bad state, and hence, when they started looking or when they started solving the quant section, so you are typically not present completely in that time frame at all. Your mind was distracted. You were underperforming. You were in an emotionally charged state. So because of the emotions running high in your mind, because of the emotions running high in your mind, you were kind of not completely present here. So your 100% of your mind is not available. And when that happens, obviously the quant section requires you to come in to the section with your complete mind available. It cannot be it cannot be that you are partially available. It cannot be that you are mentally distracted. It cannot be that you are mentally unstable while solving the quant section, because if you are in that kind of a state, then your mind will not work at all. And what you have trained, please remember this, there are two states of mind that you have. There are two states, and this is the first major point I want to bring in to this session. There are two major states of mind you have. One is the unemotional, a mind which is not encompassed with emotions. One is the unemotional, unemotional, logical, straight thinking mind. Unemotional, logical, straight thinking mind. The other, the other, and I'll put this in red because this is the dangerous part of the mind. The other is the emotionally charged. It turned out wrong. Yeah, so the other is the emotionally charged. Sometimes even emotionally supercharged. The emotionally charged, or even sometimes the emotionally supercharged mind, which is not thinking straight, which is not thinking straight, right? And which is essentially, because it's not thinking straight, it is basically going to create errors for you. Now, what you need to understand is that, and this is true not just for the quant section, this is true for every section. Now, if you're prepared for the CAT, if you're prepared for the CAT, these are almost like two people inside your head. And if you're prepared for the CAT, if you're prepared for the CAT, then this is the mind you have trained. All your study sessions, all your training sessions, all your practice sessions was training this mind. And for whatever reason, during that 1 hour in the exam, or in the quant section, if this mind is not available, for whatever reason, this mind is not available. If this mind is not available during the exam, and this mind turns up to take the exam, it is like two twin brothers, one of whom has trained for something, let's say playing a piano, one of whom is trained for playing a piano, but on D Day, on the day of the performance, you put the other twin brother in front of the audience. It's going to be a complete, utter disaster. And I personally believe that this is one of the reasons why a lot of people face major issues while preparing for the CAT and while trying to score well. And normally, 99% of the people whom you'll meet will underperform on the D Day because they are not there. The trained mind. This is the trained mind. This is the trained cousin or the trained twin. And this is the untrained twin. If the untrained twin is taking the exam, if the untrained twin is on the piano, he's going to mess up. So the first principle at the start of every section, and this is true for VRC, this is true for DILR, and this is true for Quants. The first principle is to clean up your mind. When the previous section, it does not take you more than 5 seconds to get back to the correct state of mind. Clean your mind. Wipe it out of all influences, especially influences like how you did in your VRC and DILR. So I'll give you a small example about why I'm telling you this is so important. Uh, CAT 17, CAT 16. What happened? CAT 15, the DILR used to be normal. I mean, there would be some tough questions, but CAT 16 onwards, CAT 16 suddenly the DILR section kind of changed its nature and became an extremely intricate, the kind of questions I mean that you see nowadays in the exam. It became an extremely intricate exam, and because of that, what happened was that when people went to the second section, verbal was normal, but when people went to the DILR section, when they went to the DILR section, and they started solving it, they had a very bad experience compared to what they had projected that they'll do. So if somebody goes in with a target that I'm going to solve 20 questions out of 32 in the exam, and after 1 hour of a very poor experience, ends up doing only 12 out of 32 because the paper was tougher, then his state of mind goes for a 6. And instead of the trained twin coming into the next section, the next section starts with the untrained part of your mind, the untrained twin in the mind, taking the exam. So what happened to people, specifically in CAT 16 and 17 in DLR, was that this happened. Target, actual. And then they said that up to khatam ho gaya, paper is gone, I have not done well. So I'm not going to have a good CAT, so I'm out of the race. So they entered the quant section in a state of depression, in a state of dejection, and utterly disappointed with themselves. And hence the train twin did not turn up. And during this 1 hour of the exam, they had kind of given up. कि होने नहीं वाला है. So when they came out of the paper, everybody was talking about a tough DILR. And the actual tragedy that happened, and this happens every year on one section or the other, the percentile target of 20 out of 32, the percentile target that somebody would have had if he took 20 attempts out of 32, was achieved in only 12 attempts out of 32 in the same year. So suppose somebody was targeting a 98 percentile with 20 out of 32 attempts. He got the 98 percentile with only 12 out of 32 attempts. He got the 98 percentile with only 12 out of 32 attempts. So the DI took care of itself. But where these people failed was because the 1 hour in the quants, their mind was not present, and the trained twin, so to say, was not there, and the untrained twin was solving it. They flunked the quant section of the paper because of the psychological effects of what happened in the DI sets, or what happened in the DI section. So DI section went out okay. You got the percentile that you were targeting because you did according to what you had to do there. And 20 or 32, if your target was with a 98 percentile target, you did only 12. But the dejection and the despondence and the disappointment that this led to, where you think too far ahead to the results rather than focusing on reacting one step at a time, that completely spoiled the quant section. And because of spoiling the quant section, these people did not qualify or did not get the percentile that they deserved. So this is one of the reasons why I tell you that once a section is over, forget it and start the next section as if nothing has happened. Start with hope, and much more importantly, start every section with your trained mind available, not with your untrained mind. You know, I've seen an IIT, a student of mine from IIT Kharagpur, and this I wrote about this in an article that I used to write in Times of India 10, 12 years ago. If you look at Education Times, you'll find a series of articles by me on that about the CAT. So this student was an IIT Kharagpur graduate, and uh, inside at that time it used to be a paper pen test, and this guy on his paper, I have actually seen this written on his paper: 3 into 3 equals 6. Now you tell me, how does an IIT Kharagpur graduate, and that too he had 137th rank in the JEE, how does an IIT Kharagpur person and how does an IIT Kharagpur mind do this error, make this error happen? The simple answer is that the trained mind is not there, and it is the untrained mind, the untrained twin inside your mind, untrained mind that is taking over. So this refreshing your mind, rebooting your mind, and you know sometimes your computer hangs because too many processes are running, and then what you do is you just forcefully shut it down. It's not responding at all. You forcefully shut it down and restart it, and then it's clean. It's working perfectly. So something similar you have to do at the start of the section, and also what happens is this trained mind untrained mind business is not a one shot thought कि okay, when I'm starting the paper तो मेरा trained mind आ गया तो वो राइट थ्रू रहेगा. ऐसा कोई कोई रीजन नहीं है. Things happen in the exam as you start experiencing the test. Things happen inside the test, and there's a tendency for the untrained mind to come up. This is the reason why a lot of you make silly errors in the exam. And since there are 4 days left now for the CAT 8, CAT 19, and I'm quite sure you have already reached your numerical structures in terms of what scores you are getting. The last 4 days, obviously, no new studies is going to change your scores, but what can definitely change your scores in the last 4 days is one, if you limit your silly errors, and second, if you limit your did not strike questions. If you limit your did not strike questions, if you limit these two things, if you limit these two things, your scores can even now go up by 20 marks in the paper. What do you need to do? 3 silly errors you remove in the paper, and did not strike. By did not strike, I mean questions in the paper that you knew how to solve, but it did not strike you then. And later, when you looked at it outside the exam, and I keep getting this from a lot of my students, when I was solving this in the exam, I was not getting it. Inside the test, I was not understanding what to do. But as soon as I looked at it after the test got over, I realized that this is a simple question, and I've solved so many like this. So that's something that you need to so knew but did not strike in the exam, and you knew later. So if these two are happening, and my typical estimate of people that I talk to, they make at least 5 to 7 silly errors, Quants DILR, and some in verbal also. And the did not strike is also 5 to 7 questions. So all you need to do to raise your score, because see, raising your score has two routes. The one longer route is you improve your ability, and you keep improving your ability and hope that it will come up in your scores. But ability improvement is a 3 to 6 month game. The other shortcut to score improvement is this one: Get rid of your silly errors and get rid of your did not strike. Why is it not striking you? Because your trained mind is not available. What you have trained for, what you have prepared for through the year, that guy is not giving the exam. That guy is not taking the test. I got a message from a student of mine on WhatsApp the other day कि सर मेरा स्कोर अब गिरने लगा है. So I told him that your mind is not present. You're not allowing your trained mind to behave. And that's why it's very important before D-Day to tell yourself, and I've talked about this in another YouTube session on an Academy channel, that you have to tell yourself before the exam starts that why CAT is not important for you. Why CAT isn't your last chance. Why is CAT not your last chance? And it's a fact. The fact of the matter is CAT is not your last chance. This is a fact, undisputable fact. Because I often ask people this question when people come to me that sir इसी पे सब कुछ dependent है, everything is dependent. I ask them one very simple question. You're in 2019 and I'll ask you this question again today. You want to be somebody in 2029, 10 years later? You want to be somebody in 2039, 20 years later? So suppose you do not perform in the CAT, you fail in the CAT, you do not do what you wanted to do in the CAT. Will you give up on this goal? Does this goal change? Will you give up on this goal? The answer is definitely not. You'll still fight your way and there'll be a path there. The path might be slightly more tedious, it might be more rocky, but there'll still be a path to that point, even if this fails. So hence, the moment you inform yourself this, your mindset will change completely and you will then not feel the fear and the anxiety. Or even if you feel it, you will not have that level of fear or anxiety. And these are two most damaging emotions. वैसे emotions सब कुछ damaging है. Even at my level of expertise of solving this exam, last year I picked up a question. I got very happy that this is a simple question, ये तो हो जाएगा. Overconfident, I made a silly error in that question. So, and that cost me my 100 percentile. I got 99.99 last year. And this happens with all of us. So you have to be in a machine-like state in the exam, completely. Now, the other aspect, this is one part of it, this is pre-preparation. The other aspect of the D-Day performance of the quant section, and this is not just for number systems but all areas, is that when you start solving, one of the principles that all toppers have is that they see 100% of the questions. That means they start from question number one and they're able to process all the questions and take decisions about each of the questions. So naturally, if somebody sees 34 questions and somebody else only sees 22 questions, if they have equal skills of solving, this guy will solve 50% more questions than this guy. So if he's going to have 16 attempts, this guy will have 24 attempts because if they're equally skilled and that guy sees 34 questions, he'll definitely have an advantage. He'll get the simpler questions. The biggest danger in the CAT, which happens to most people, is that they see only 20, 22, 24 questions. And when they see only that much questions, they miss out on 10 to 12 questions. And if you're missing out on 10 to 12 questions, if the paper is a normal paper, 5 to 6 of them will be easy. So you're missing out on 5, 6 easy questions because you spend all your time here. So one of the principles, and I'll illustrate this graphically here. One of the principles is that when you start, this is the starting of the paper, and let's say this is the end of the paper, the end point. That's the end of the paper, and that's the start of the paper. So when you start, you have two resources. You have 100% time available, and you have 100% questions available at the start. Now, for most people, what happens is the speed at which the time goes is faster than the speed at which the questions are going. So, for most people, what happens is that this time question imbalance starts getting created. So, what would happen typically? Typical people solving, typical normal 90, even the 98, 99 percentile is solving. At the 20-minute mark, which is at which point you have spent 33% of your time, one third of your time, at the 20-minute mark, they would be at around the eighth question, seventh, eighth question, which means that they would have seen only 20 to 25% of the questions. So you had a start where you had 100% time, 100% question, 1:1 ratio. Now you have 67% time and 75 to 80% of questions. So I'm not talking about how many questions you solved, I'm talking about how many questions you process. So at the 20th minute, if you're reading the 8th question, you already created this imbalance. Now time was difficult to manage even in a 1:1 ratio. Time and questions were difficult to manage even in a 1:1 ratio. How will you manage it with a less than 1:1 ratio? Time to number of questions. And this will keep getting acuter and acuter. So by the time if you don't prepare this, by the time you're at 50 minutes, by the time you're at 50 minutes, you and 83% of the time, you spend 83% of the time, one sixth of the time is left. You might just be on question 18 to 20, which means you are just at barely 50 to 60% of the questions. And then after that, last 10 minutes, you will not be able to think anything, because when you pick up a question, you're trying to finish it off in 20 seconds. You have to give questions the time that they take. If a question needs 1.5 minutes to solve it, you have to use it. You have to give it that. You have to give it that space. But you don't have that space because you have mismanaged or imbalanced time and questions. So, what is my advice against this? How do you manage against this? My advice against this is that you have to use this strategy. 16% question time, 16% time, 16% questions. So that means at the 10th minute mark, you have to be on question 6. And I'm not saying that you solve all 6 questions, because they will depend on your ability to solve. Most people obviously will not be able to solve 6 questions in 6 minutes, in 10 minutes. But what I'm saying is you process that much. You should have processed the first 6 questions. You should have taken a call about which one you do and which one you do not do. And you just break it down every 10 minutes. Every 10 minutes, next 10 minutes, you have to be on question 12. Even if you solve just 2 of them, if you're weak at maths and if you just solve 2 of them, you'll be at 12 attempts. If everything is gone correct, you'll get 36 marks. 36 marks last year was a 95 percentile. If you're good at maths, and you're solving 3, or not poor but average, 3 out of 6 is average. If you're able to solve 3 out of 6, you're solving 18 questions, then you're getting 54 marks, which is 99%. So even if your skills are average, your percentile is above average. 99 is definitely above average percentile. And if you're good at maths and you somehow can maintain an average of 3.5 to 4 for every 10 minutes, attempts wise, if you maintain that average of 3.5 to 4 every 10 minutes, attempt wise, then you are at 21 to 24 questions. You are at 70 marks, which is 99.5 plus percentile in last year's CAT. And that's the story of what you need to do. Right, so I hope this was a useful session for all of you. In the context of CAT 19 being just 4 days away, I thought rather than teaching a few more questions, this is something I have to talk to you about. And before I wind up, just wanted to inform you about Unacademy Plus. Unacademy Plus is a program which is a subscription model on Unacademy, where I'm also one of the trainers, the whole gamut of trainers teaching you quants, DI, LR, everything that you care about for the quants. And subscription is available for 1 month, 3 months, 6 months, 12 months. And once you take a subscription of Unacademy Plus, you get access to all the courses and of all the teachers, right? And if you do want to take that Unacademy Plus subscription, you can use my promo code. My promo code is Arun Sharma, and this gives you a 10% discount on the already existing fees. Discounted fees already, there's already a discounted fee going on Academy Plus, on the Academy Plus website. If you use this promo code, you'll get a 10% further discount. You have to use this while paying. You'll get a 10% further discount on the existing fees. So do use this promo code, and I hope to watch some of you, see some of you in case you're going for CAT 20. Of course, I hope you don't require it, those of you giving CAT 19. My best wishes to all of you. God bless. All the best. Please remember, there are two twins inside you, the trained mind and the untrained mind. The trained mind has to be there in the CAT, right? Keep the untrained mind home. See you then. I hope that's fine for all of you. So thank you so much. I'll wind up now. Bye bye.